Section 28 of Modern Magic. Recording by Lucy Park. Modern Magic, a practical treatise on the art of conjuring, by Professor Lewis Hoffman. Tricks with Handkerchiefs, Part 3. There is another form of the same trick, in which the handkerchief plays only a secondary part, but, from its near relation to that last described, we insert it in this place. It is generally called the flying plume. For this trick you require two plumes, as nearly as possible alike in appearance. To the stem of each should be attached a loop of string or ribbon, 2 or 3 inches in length. You must also have a japanned tin tube, of about 20 inches long and 3 in diameter. On each end is fitted a cap, of about 2 inches in depth. One of these caps is perfectly plain, but within the other is an inner cap, made after the fashion of the middle compartment of the snuff-box vase. See page 217. The relative tightness of the inner and outer caps is such that, if in removing the outer one with the finger and thumb, some slight degree of lateral pressure is exerted, it nibs the inner cap, which comes off with it. But if the outer cap is removed without pressure, the inner cap remains on the tube, forming a false top on it. Within this inner cap, which is internally about 1.5 inches deep, is glued a short end of a third plume, similar in color and appearance to the 2 others. The interior of the tube is divided into 2 parts by a longitudinal division, also of tin, running diagonally nearly from end to end. The tube is thus divided into 2 wedge-shaped compartments, the cap at one end giving access to the one, and the cap at the other end to the other, each being large enough to contain a plume. See Figure 112, representing a section of the entire tube, and Figure 113, giving a slightly enlarged view of the ends. The tube is prepared beforehand by filling the compartment, which is closed by the double cap, with bonbons of various kinds, the other compartment being left empty. One of the plumes is concealed in the left sleeve of the performer, as in the last trick. These preparations having been duly made beforehand, you come forward with a small shawl, or a large handkerchief, the tube, and the second plume. Laying the tube and plume upon the table, you request the audience to satisfy themselves that the shawl contains nothing. You then ask someone to step forward and take care of the shawl, which you meanwhile carelessly throw over your left hand, immediately after taking hold of its center with your right, as before described, and drawing the left arm away. It is needless to remark, to those who have followed the explanation of the last trick, that the hidden plume is thereby brought under the shawl, though, being held by the loop of ribbon, there is nothing to betray its presence. You hand the shawl in this condition to the person who has volunteered to hold it, requesting him to keep it at arm's length, still hanging down. Next, taking up the tube, you open it at the plain or unprepared end, and holding it mouth downwards, show that it is apparently empty, and ostentatiously place the plume therein, and put the cap on. In returning to your table, you take the opportunity to reverse the tube, and to lay it down in such a manner that the opposite end, i.e., that with the false top, may be turned towards the audience. Some performers do this by letting the tube fall, as if by accident, but this is, in our opinion, a clumsy and inartistic proceeding. By gesticulating a little with the tube, and announcing what you are about to do, so that the audience may, little by little, become less certain as to which end you have just opened, and by carelessly transferring the tube from the one hand to the other, just as you lay it on the table, you may make the change with scarcely a chance of detection, even by the keenest observer. You then say, "I shall now, ladies and gentlemen, make the plume which you have just seen me place in this tube travel into the shawl which that gentleman is holding, while the tube will be completely filled with objects of interest for the juvenile spectators. Here you may possibly hear, or if not, you pretend to hear, a murmur to the effect that the feather has already left the tube. Pardon me, you say, the plume has not yet left the tube, neither will it do so until I give the command. And so saying, you take off the cap, leaving on the false top. The audience see the little bit of feather within, which they naturally take to be the end of the genuine plume. Again you replace the cap, and after going through some appropriate magical ceremony, again remove it, but this time carrying off the false top with it. It should have been mentioned that the tube is japanned in such manner that the eye cannot detect any difference whether the false top is on or off. Placing the cap, with the false top within it, on the table, you come forward and pour the sweets from the tube, while the shawl is, on examination, found to contain the plume. Some performers, for the purpose of this trick, use a tube with a false top, as above described, but open from end to end without the diagonal partition above mentioned. Before placing the plume in the tube, which they do standing behind the table, they secretly remove the cap at the lower end, and allow the plume to fall through on the servante, where it remains. In this case there is no production of sweets, but the plume having been produced from the shawl, the performer removes both caps and hands the empty tube for examination. Tap magic laundry. There is very little brilliancy, either of invention or of manipulation in this trick, but it is nevertheless generally very well received. The performer requests the loan of half a dozen handkerchiefs, taking care to accept white handkerchiefs only. These he collects in a wooden box, having somewhat the appearance of a good-sized tea-caddy. Having got the required number, he places the box upon his table, and invites the attention of the audience to an ordinary tin or wooden pail. This he fills with water, and placing it in front of the stage, takes the handkerchiefs out of the box, and drops them in, steering them about with his wand, and making as much fun as he can by his pretended anxiety that they shall be thoroughly washed. Having kept this up as long as the audience appear to be amused thereby, he wrings out the handkerchiefs one by one, and throws them into a little shallow metal tub or pan, japanned and about 4 inches in depth, which his assistant at this moment brings forward for that purpose, together with a cover after the manner of a saucepan lid, and a pistol, both of which he places carelessly on the table. Having placed the handkerchiefs in this little tub, the performer announces that having washed them, he will now proceed to dry them, for which purpose he pours over them a little spirits of wine, to which he sets fire. After letting them blaze for a moment or two, he claps on the cover. Your handkerchiefs are now dried, ladies and gentlemen, he says, but I have still to fold and iron them. It does not take very long, as you will see. Taking up the pistol, he fires at the tub, and immediately removing the cover, comes forward to the audience, and requests them to identify their handkerchiefs, which are seen neatly folded, and apparently just washed and ironed, within it. The intelligent reader will have already guessed that the trick depends upon a substitution of handkerchiefs. The box in which the genuine handkerchiefs are received has within it a movable flap, between which and the back of the box the substitutes are placed. When the required number has been collected, this flap lets fall, releasing the substitute handkerchiefs, and at the same time covering the genuine ones. The substitutes having been dropped into the pail of water, the assistant carries off the box, and behind the scenes damps and folds the borrowed handkerchiefs, pressing them flat with a hot iron, if available, if not, with a cold one. The tub or pan which is used for the conclusion of the trick has an inner lining of a size as to fit tightly within it, but about an inch less in depth. The lid, again, fits within this, after the manner of a saucepan lid, but not quite so tightly as the lining itself fits within the outer pan. The folded handkerchiefs are placed within this lining, and the lid placed on, or rather in it, the two together as brought forward, having the appearance of a lid only. When the performer clasps the lid on the pan, the lining is thereby introduced, but when he again removes it, the lining is left in, exposing the folded handkerchiefs, while the substitutes remain concealed between the true and false bottoms of the pan. The performer, of necessity, accepts white handkerchiefs only, as a colored one would betray the secret, from the absence of its double among the substitutes. Some performers, in order to obviate the suspicion which might be suggested by an evident preference of white handkerchiefs, arrange that a colored one, of which they possess a duplicate, shall be offered by a confederate among the audience. This certainly heightens the effect of the trick, as it seems to negative the idea of substitution, and though in general we deprecate, as belonging to a low class of art, the employment of confederates, this is just the case in which the use of such expedient may for once be deemed admissible. The egg in the handkerchief. For this capital feat, which is generally identified with the name of Colonel Stodare, the following are the requirements: a glass goblet, 2 small handkerchiefs, generally of plain crimson silk and about 16 inches square, a larger silk handkerchief, to which is attached by a silk thread of about 4 inches in length, a blown eggshell, and a hollow metal egg made of zinc, enameled white, with an oval opening on one side of it, measuring about 1.5 inches by 1 inch, or a little more. The performer comes forward, having in his right hand the goblet and one of the red silk handkerchiefs. The larger silk handkerchief is thrown with apparent carelessness over the other hand, and upon it rests the blown egg, so placed that the thread may be out of sight, while beneath the egg, concealed in a fold of the handkerchief, lies the second red handkerchief, rolled up into as small a compass as possible. The metal egg is, meanwhile, placed in the left-hand secret pocket of the performer, who introduces the trick as follows. I have here, ladies and gentlemen, a drinking glass, a couple of silk handkerchiefs, and an egg, all, as you will perceive, of the most ordinary description. He passes quickly in front of the audience, as though tendering the articles for examination, taking care, however, to keep his right arm advanced towards the spectators, so that the glass and small silk handkerchief may bear the brunt of inspection, and finally places the glass and small handkerchief on a table or chair in full view. Pray observe, he continues, that not one of the articles is removed from your sight, even for 1 moment. Now, please follow me closely. I will place the egg in the glass, and cover it over with this handkerchief. This he does by one movement, for as the egg is already lying on the handkerchief, a mere turn of the wrist places the egg in the glass, and at the same time lets fall the handkerchief over it. And at the same time the smaller handkerchief, which was concealed in the larger, is released and falls into the glass with the egg. You have all seen me place the egg in the glass, at the same time shaking the glass, to show by the sound that the egg is still there, which I will not again touch. I shall now take this small handkerchief, the one which has remained on the table, and standing as far as possible away, I shall command the handkerchief to dissolve and pass into the glass, and the egg, which is now in the glass, to come into my hands. So saying, he holds up the handkerchief in such manner as to show indirectly that he has nothing else in his hands. Taking a few steps, as though merely to get further from the glass, and holding the handkerchief hanging down between the finger and thumb of the right hand, he drops the other hand to his side, and secretly takes from his pocket the hollow egg, which he palms, keeping the opening outwards. He then, standing with his left side towards the spectators, joins his open hands as in figure 114, the handkerchief hanging down between them. Requesting the audience to watch him narrowly, that they may be quite sure that there is no deception, he begins to wave his joined hands slowly up and down, the second and third fingers of the right hand, which, it will be remembered, is away from the audience, meanwhile gradually working the handkerchief into the hollow of the egg. He every now and then pauses to show that the handkerchief is gradually diminishing, and at last, when it is wholly worked into the egg, opens his hands and shows the egg lying in his palm, taking care, of course, that the opening is undermost. To all appearance, the handkerchief has changed into an egg. "Here is the egg," he remarks. "Let us see if the handkerchief also has obeyed my bidding." So saying, he lays the egg, still with the opening downwards, upon the table, and taking hold with the finger and thumb of the handkerchief, which covers the glass, lifts it daintily up, carrying with it, concealed in its folds, the egg-shell attached thereto, and leaving the duplicate red handkerchief lying in the glass. It may sometimes, though not very often, occur that one or other of the spectators, suspecting some peculiarity about the egg, may ask to be permitted to examine it. This, of course, you cannot permit, while to refuse would destroy half the prestige of the illusion. Fortunately, there is a way out of this difficulty which absolutely enhances the effect of the trick. "You would like to see the egg," you reply. "By all means. It is a special feature of my entertainment that all articles used therein will bear the strictest examination. Here is the egg." During these few words you have taken up the sham egg with the fingers of your right hand, taking care, of course, to keep the opening away from the audience, and have thence apparently transferred it to your left, with which hand you offer it to the too curious spectator. It is hardly necessary to remark that in the apparent transfer of the egg to the left hand you have really palmed it in your right, and as you extend the left hand to the spectator, you quietly drop it from the right into the pochette on that side. The inquirer holds out his hand to receive it. "Pray examine it closely," you say, opening your empty hand over his own. "What? You have not got it? Ah, that is your fault. You are not quick enough. I always find that this experiment makes the egg excessively volatile." This unexpected denouement never fails to raise a laugh against the individual who has sought to embarrass you, while the impromptu disappearance of the egg will be regarded by many as the most marvellous portion of the trick. The same expedient will be equally available to prevent the examination at an awkward moment of other small articles. There is another method in which the trick is performed with handkerchiefs borrowed from the audience. In this case, two metal eggs, like that above described, are used, the blown egg being dispensed with. The performer commences the trick by borrowing two handkerchiefs, a lady's handkerchief and a larger one, preferably of silk. These he places on his table, secretly exchanging the smaller one for a substitute of his own, and retires for a moment to fetch a glass. He takes advantage of his momentary absence to insert the handkerchief, of which he has gained possession, into one of the hollow eggs, and returns with this egg lying, the opening downwards, on his left palm, the other hand holding the glass, while the second hollow egg is concealed in his left pochette. Coming forward to the audience, he picks up, and passing the larger handkerchief from the table, and handing the glass, as forming the principal portion of the apparatus, for examination, throws the handkerchief over the hand which holds the egg, showing by its outline beneath the silk that it has not been removed, and meanwhile drawing out with the finger and thumb of the concealed hand the handkerchief hidden therein, which is ready to be placed in the glass along with the egg, under cover of the larger handkerchief. The rest of the trick proceeds as already described, save that in this instance, the egg not being attached to the outer handkerchief, it is necessary to clip it with the fingers through the handkerchief when the latter is removed. To do this easily and efficiently, it is well, in placing the egg in the glass, to place it with the opening upwards, the edges of the opening giving a readier hold than the unbroken surface of the opposite side. The hand box, for vanishing a handkerchief. While discussing the subject of handkerchief tricks, we must not omit to mention the hand box, a clever little contrivance for causing the disappearance of a handkerchief. It consists of a little tin box, of the size and shape of the heel of a gentleman's boot, closed on all sides, save that which answers to the front portion of the heel, which is left open. See Figure 115. To one of its sides is riveted or soldered a steel spring, about an inch in length. The free end of this spring forms with the side of the box a sort of clip, by means of which the box can be attached, as shown in the figure, to the fleshy part of the hand, the opening being towards the fingers. Being within the hand, it is of course unseen by the audience. The manner of its use is much the same as that of the hollowed egg described in the last trick, save that the hand box is never exhibited. As soon as the handkerchief is fairly worked in, the left hand is closed, as if containing it, the effect being to the audience as if the handkerchief was merely rolled up and placed in the left hand. On opening the hand, the handkerchief is found to have disappeared, the performer having meanwhile plenty of opportunity to drop the concealed handkerchief, box and all, into the pochette on his right-hand side. The hand box may be made available in a variety of ways, as follows. The performer, having borrowed a handkerchief, secretly changes it for a substitute, which he leaves in full view on the table. Having made what disposition he pleases of the original, he returns, meanwhile placing the hand box in position, and causing by its means the disappearance of the substitute, orders the borrowed article to be found in such place as he may think proper. End of section 28.
Section 29 of Modern Magic. Recording by Megan Clavey Parker. Modern Magic, a practical treatise on the art of conjuring, by Professor Lewis Hoffman. Tricks with Dominoes and Dice. Chapter 12. Tricks with Dominoes and Dice. To arrange a row of dominoes face downwards on the table, and on returning to the room, to turn up a domino whose points shall indicate how many have been moved in your absence. This is a capital drawing-room feat. You place a row of 20 dominoes face downwards upon the table, avoiding, as far as possible, the appearance of any special arrangement, but nevertheless taking care that the points of the first domino, commencing from the left, shall amount to 12, the points of the second to 11, and so on, each decreasing by 1 point till you reach the 13th, which will be the double blank. The points of the remaining 7 are a matter of indifference. You now propose to give the company a specimen of your powers of clairvoyance, and for that purpose leave the room, first requesting the company to remove during your absence any number of dominoes, not exceeding 12, from the right to the left hand of the row, in other respects retaining their order. On your return, you advance to the table, and address the company to the following effect. Ladies and gentlemen, as I have already told you, I have the privilege of possessing the clairvoyant faculty, and I am about to give you a specimen of my powers. Now, it would seem at first sight sufficiently surprising that I should be able to merely tell you the number of dominoes which have been moved in my absence. But that might be easily effected by confederacy, or many other very simple expedients. I propose to do much more than this, and to show you not only that I know the number that you have just displaced, but that I can read the dominoes before you as readily in their present position as though they were lying face upwards. For instance, this domino, touching one of the row with your finger or wand, represents the number which have been moved in my absence. Will someone please to say what that number was? The answer is, we will suppose, 7. 7, you repeat, turning over the domino you have touched. You see that I was right. Would you like me to name some more? They are all equally easy. This, let me see, yes, this is a 2. This is a 9. This is a double 6. This is a double blank. Turning over each domino to show that you have named it right. This feat, which appears perfectly miraculous to the uninitiated, is performed by the simplest possible means. All that you have to do is to count secretly the row of dominoes as far as the 13th from the left-hand end, or, which is the same thing, the 8th from the right-hand end, the points of which will invariably be the same as the number moved from the right to the left of the row. You do not know, until the domino is turned up, what that number actually was, but you must by no means let the audience suspect this. You must boldly assume to know the number, and from that knowledge, aided by some clairvoyant faculty, to have selected a domino whose points shall represent that number. Thus, having selected the proper domino, you call upon the audience to state the number moved, after which the turning up of the selected domino is regarded by the audience merely as proof that you were correct in the previous knowledge for which they, without the smallest foundation, give you credit. After this domino has been turned up, it is easy, knowing the original order of the 13 of which it forms one, to name 2 or 3 on either side of it. In most instances, you will only know the total figure of a given domino, as 2 or 3 different combinations of points will give the same total. Thus a total of 7 may be represented by either 6 and 1, 5 and 2, or 4 and 3. But there are 2 or 3 dominoes of which, if you know the total, you know the points also. Thus a total 12 must always be double 6, a blank always double blank, a 1 always blank 1. By naming 2 or 3 of these, as if haphazard, you will prevent the audience suspecting, as they otherwise might, that your knowledge is limited to the total of each domino. It is obvious that this is a trick which cannot be repeated, as the necessary rearrangement of the dominoes would at once attract attention. You may, however, volunteer to repeat it in a still more surprising form, really performing in its place the trick next following, one of the best, though also one of the simplest, in the whole range of the magic art. To allow any person in your absence to arrange the dominoes in a row, face downwards, and on your return to name, blindfolded or without entering the room, the end numbers of the row. You invite the audience to select any one of their number to arrange the whole of the dominoes face downwards upon the table. This he may do in any manner he pleases, the only restriction being that he is to arrange them after the fashion of the game of dominoes, so that a 6 shall be coupled with a 6, and a 4 with a 4, and so on. While he does this, you leave the room, and, on being recalled, you at once pronounce, either blindfold, or, if the audience prefer it, without even entering the room, that the extreme end numbers of the row are 6 and 5, 5 and 2, etc., as the case may be. This seeming marvel depends upon a very simple principle. It will be found by experiment that a complete set of dominoes, arranged in a row according to domino rules, i.e., like numbers together, will invariably have the same number at each end. Thus, if the final number at one end of the row be 5, that at the opposite end will be 5 also, and so on, so that the 28 dominoes are ranged as above, from numerically an endless chain or circle. If this circle be broken by the removal of any domino, the numbers on either side of the gap thus made will be the same as those of the missing domino. Thus, if you take away a 5-3, the chain thus broken will terminate at one end with a 5 and at the other with a 3. This is the whole secret of the trick. The performer secretly abstracts one domino, say the 5-3. This renders it a matter of certainty that the row to be formed with the remaining dominoes will terminate with a 5 at the one end and a 3 at the other, and so on with any other domino of two unequal numbers. The domino abstracted must not be a double, or the trick will fail. A little consideration will show why this is the case. The removal of a double from the endless chain we have mentioned produces no break in the chain, as the numbers on each side of the gap, being alike, will coalesce, and a row formed with the remaining dominoes under such conditions may be made to terminate in any number, such number being, however, alike at either end. A domino of two different numbers, on the other hand, being removed, forces, so to speak, the series made with the remainder to terminate with those particular numbers. To change invisibly the numbers shown on either face of a pair of dice. Take a pair of ordinary dice, and so place them between the first finger and thumb of the right hand, see Figure 116, that the uppermost shall show the 1, and the lowermost the 3 point, while the 1 point of the latter and the 3 point of the former are at right angles to those first named, and concealed by the ball of the thumb. The enlargement at A in the figure shows clearly the proper position. Ask someone to name aloud the points which are in sight, and to state particularly, for the information of the company, which point is uppermost. This having been satisfactorily ascertained, you announce that you are able, by simply passing a finger over the faces of the dice, to make the points change places. So saying, gently rub the exposed faces of the dice with the forefinger of the left hand, and, on again removing the finger, the points are found to have changed places, the 3 being now uppermost, and the 1 undermost. This effect is produced by a slight movement of the thumb and finger of the right hand, in the act of bringing the hands together, the thumb being moved slightly forward, and the finger slightly back. This causes the two dice to make a quarter turn vertically on their own axis, bringing into view the side which has hitherto been concealed by the ball of the thumb, while the side previously in sight is in turn hidden by the middle finger. A reverse movement, of course, places the dice in their original position. The action of bringing the hands together, for the supposed purpose of rubbing the dice with the opposite forefinger, completely covers the smaller movement of the thumb and finger. After having exhibited the trick in this form once or twice, you may vary your mode of operation. For this purpose, take the dice, still retaining their relative position, horizontally between the thumb and second finger, in the manner depicted in Figure 117, showing 3-1 on their upper face, the corresponding 3-1, or rather 1-3, being now covered by the forefinger. As the points on the opposite faces of a die invariably together amount to 7, it is obvious that the points on the underside will now be 4-6, while the points next to the ball of the thumb will be 6-4. You show, alternately raising and lowering the hand, that the points above are 3-1, and those below 6-4. Again going through the motion of rubbing the dice with the opposite forefinger, you slightly raise the thumb and depress the middle finger, which will bring the 6-4 uppermost and the 3-1 or 1-3 undermost. This may be repeated any number of times, or you may, by moving the thumb and finger accordingly, produce either a 3-1 or 6-4, apparently both above and below the dice. The trick may, of course, be varied as regards the particular points, but the dice must, in any case, be so placed to have similar points on two adjoining faces. To name, without seeing them, the points of a pair of dice. This is a more arithmetical recreation, but it is so good that we cannot forbear to notice it. You ask the person who threw the dice to choose which of them he likes, multiply its points by 2, add 5 to the product, multiply the sum so obtained by 5, and add the points of the remaining die. On his telling you the result, you mentally subtract 25 from it, when the remainder will be a number of 2 figures, each representing the points of one of the dice. Thus, suppose the throws to be 5, 2. 5 multiplied by 2 are 10. Add 5, 15, which, multiplied by 5, is 75, to which 2, the points of the remaining die, being added, the total is 77. If from this you mentally deduct 25, the remainder is 52, giving the points of the 2 dice, 5 and 2. But, you will say, suppose the person who threw had reversed the arithmetical process, and had taken the points of the second die, 2, as his multiplicand. The result must have been different. Let us try the experiment. Twice 2 are 4, 5 added make 9, which multiplied by 5 is 45, and 5, the points of the other die being added to it, bring the total up to 50. From this subtract 25 as before. The remainder, 25, again gives the points of the 2 dice, but in the reverse order, and the same result will follow, whatever the throws may be. End of section 29.
Section 30 of Modern Magic. Recording by April Walters. Modern Magic, a practical treatise on the art of conjuring by Professor Louis Hoffman. The Cup and Balls, Part 1. The subject of the present chapter may be said to be the groundwork of all legerdemain, being, we believe, the very earliest form in which sleight of hand was exhibited. At the present day it is not very often seen, save in the bastard form known as thimblerig, used as a means of fleecing the unwary upon race-courses and at country fairs. It is, however, well worthy the attention of the student of modern magic, not only as affording an excellent course of training in digital dexterity, but as being, in the hands of an adept, most striking in effect. It is by no means uncommon to find spectators who have received more elaborate feats with comparative indifference become interested and even enthusiastic over a brilliant manipulation of the cups and balls. The prestige of the illusion is heightened by the simplicity of the appliances used, consisting merely of 3 tin cups about 3 inches high, each in the form of a truncated cone, with a rim or shoulder round the base. See Figure 118. The ordinary wand, 4 little cork balls 3/4 of an inch or a little less in diameter and blackened in the flame of a candle, 3 larger balls of about 1 1/4 inches in diameter, and 4 more of such a size as to just fill the goblet. These last are generally stuffed with hair and covered with cloth. The number of balls may vary according to the particular passes which the performer desires to exhibit, but the above will be found sufficient for most purposes. The performers of the olden time were accustomed to use the gibeciere, or apron with pockets already mentioned, and to perform at a table having no speciality, save that it was a little higher than those in ordinary use. But at the present day the gloussière is entirely discarded, their servante of the tables answering the same purpose. The arrangement of the table and apparatus is shown in Figure 118. The whole art of the cup and ball conjuring resolves itself into 2 elements. 1. The exhibition of a ball under a cup, where a moment previously there was nothing, and 2. The disappearance of a ball from beneath a cup, under which the audience has just seen it, or believe they have seen it, placed. The routine is as follows. A cup is lifted, to show that there is nothing beneath it, and again replaced, mouth downward, on the table. A ball is taken in the right hand, transferred to the left, and thence ordered to pass under the cup. The hand is opened, the ball is vanished, and on the cup being lifted is found beneath it. Again, the ball first exhibited in the right hand is thence openly transferred, either directly under the cup or first to the left hand and thence to the cup. All having seen it placed beneath the cup, it is now commanded to depart, and on again lifting the cup, it is found to have vanished. It will hardly be believed until proved by experiment of what numerous and surprising combinations these simple elements are capable. The sleight of hand requisite for the cups and balls is technically divisible into 4 different acts or movements. That is, 1. To palm the ball, 2. To reproduce the palmed ball at the end of the fingers, 3. To secretly introduce the palmed ball under the cup, 4. To simulate the action of placing the ball under the cup. These modes of affecting these objects will be discussed in due order. 1. To palm the ball. First method. We use the generic term palm for the sake of convenience, though in this first method, which is that most generally used, the ball is really concealed between the second and third fingers and not in the palm. Take the ball between the first finger and thumb of the right hand, slightly bend the fingers, see Figure 119, and at the same moment roll the ball with the thumb across the first and second fingers, till it rests between the second and third fingers, see Figure 120, which should slightly separate to receive it, again closing as soon as it is safely lodged. The ball will now be as shown in Figure 121, and will be found that the hand can be opened or closed with perfect freedom, and indeed be used in any manner without being in the least hampered by its presence. The student should practice palming the ball in this manner, both in the act of apparently transferring the ball to the left hand, and in that of apparently placing it under a cup. Second method. The second method is to actually palm the ball in the same manner as a coin. For this purpose, the ball is, as before, taken between the first finger and thumb of the right hand, but is thence made by the thumb to roll between the tips of the third and fourth fingers, which immediately close into the palm, and again opening, leave the ball behind them. With a little practice, 2 balls in succession may be palmed in this way, and then a third by the first method. Third method. The third method is that which has been adopted by the celebrated Bosco, a most accomplished performer with the cup and balls. Being accustomed to use balls of a larger size than those above described, and therefore too bulky to palm by the first method, he used to hold them by means of a slight contraction of the little finger. See Figure 122. The necessary movement of the fingers to place the ball in position is nearly the same as by the first method. To reproduce the palmed ball at the end of the fingers. The mode of doing this will vary according to the method by which the ball is palmed. If, according to the first or third method, the ball is simply rolled back to the fingertips with the ball of the thumb exactly reversing the process by which it was palmed. But if the ball was palmed by the second method, it is, for the time being, not get-at-able by the ball of the thumb. In this case, the first step is to close the third and fourth fingers upon the ball, see Figure 123, and therewith roll it to the position shown in Figure 122, when the thumb is enabled to reach it, and to roll to the fingertips in the manner just described. 3. To secretly introduce the palmed ball under the cup. This is always done in the act of raising the cup with the right hand for the ostensible purpose of showing that there is nothing underneath it. The chief thing to be attended to is the position of the right hand, in which we are supposing a ball to be palmed by one or other of the methods above mentioned, in raising the cup. This should be done with the hand spread almost flat upon the table, and grasping the cup as low down as possible, between the thumb and the lowest joint of the forefinger. In the act of raising the cup, the fingers naturally assume the position shown in Figure 124, whereby the ball is brought into close proximity to, and slightly under, the edge of the cup. If the ball be palmed by the first method, all that is necessary in order to release it is a slight backward movement of the second and a forward movement of the third finger, made just before the cup again touches the table. This will be found to drop the ball immediately under the cup. If the ball be palmed by the third method, its introduction under the cup is a still easier matter, as by the act of raising the cup it is brought directly underneath it, and is released by the mere act of straightening the third and fourth fingers. If the ball is palmed by the second method, it becomes necessary, before taking hold of the cup, to close the third and fourth fingers slightly, see Figure 123, and bring the ball to the position shown in Figure 122. From this point, the operation is the same as if the ball had been originally palmed by the third method. It is sometimes necessary to introduce a ball between two cups. It will be remembered that each cup is made of a cylindrical rim or shoulder. The purpose of this shoulder is that, when two cups are placed upon the other, see Figure 125, there may be a space between them sufficient to receive a ball or balls. To further facilitate the introduction of the ball, the top of each cup is made not flat, but concave. When it is desired to introduce a ball between two cups, that object is effected as follows. Having the ball ready palmed in the right hand, the performer takes up a cup in the same hand, and with it covers the second cup at the same moment, introducing the ball beneath it in the ordinary manner, but with the addition of a little upward jerk, rather difficult to describe but easily acquired with a little practice. The ball is thereby thrown to the top of the uppermost cup, and, in again falling, is received by the concave top of the lowermost cup. 4. To simulate the action of placing a ball under a cup. This may be done in two ways. The first is to raise the cup with the left hand, apparently placing the ball underneath it with the right, but really palming it. Care must be taken that the edge of the cup shall touch the table at the very moment the fingers of the right hand are removed. The second and more common method is to apparently transfer the ball to the left hand, palming it in transit, and then bringing the closed left hand close to the cup on the table, raising the cup with the other hand, and immediately replacing it with a sort of scraping movement across the fingers of the now opening left hand. When the student has thoroughly mastered the various operations above described, he will have little to learn save the combination of the various passes, a matter of memory only. There are, however, one or two subordinate sleights with which he should make himself acquainted before proceeding to publicly exhibit his dexterity. To produce a ball from the wand. The wand is supposed to be the reservoir whence the magician produces his store of balls, and into which they vanish when no longer needed. The mode of production is as follows. The performer, holding the wand in his left hand and drawing attention to it by some remark as to its mysterious power of production and absorption, secretly takes with his right hand, from the servante or elsewhere, a ball which he immediately palms, preferably by the first method, daintily holding the wand by either end with the left hand, in such manner as to show that the hand is otherwise empty. He slides the thumb and fingers of the right hand, the back of which is naturally toward the audience, lightly to the opposite end, at the same moment rolling the ball with the thumb to the ends of the fingers as already described. See Figure 126. The ball thus comes in sight just as the hand leaves the wand, the effect to the eyes of the spectator being that the ball is, by some mysterious process, squeezed out of the wand. To return a ball into the wand. This is the converse of the process last described. Taking the wand in the left hand as before, and the ball between the thumb and second joint of the forefinger of the opposite hand, the performer lays the end of the wand across the tips of the fingers and draws the hand gently downward along it, at the same time palming the ball by the first method. To pass one cup through another. This is an effective sleight, and by no means difficult of acquirement. Taking one of the cups, mouth upward, in the left hand, and holding another in a similar position in the right hand, about a foot above it, the performer drops the right hand cup smartly into that in the left hand, which latter should be held very lightly. If this is neatly done, the lower cup will be knocked out of the hand by the concussion, while the upper one will be caught and held in its place, the effect to the eye of the spectator being as if the upper cup had passed through the other. The lower cup may either be allowed to fall on the ground or table, or may be caught in the right hand in its fall. The successive appearances and disappearances of the balls underneath the cups are known by the name of passes, the particular combination of such passes being governed by the taste and invention of the performer. The series most generally in use is derived from a work dating from the last century, the Recréations mathématiques et physiques of Goyot, and Goyot, we believe, borrowed it from a German source. The series given below, which will be found very effective, is derived mainly from that of Goyot, as improved by Poncin, a later and very ingenious writer on the art of prestidigitation. The cups and balls require, even more than conjuring generally, a running accompaniment of talk. Each pass should have its own boniment or patter, carefully prepared and frequently rehearsed. it would be impossible to give, within any reasonable limits, appropriate patter for each of the passes. This each performer must arrange for himself, so as to suit the style and character in which he performs, as it is obvious that the low comedy style of a mountebank at a county fair would be utterly unsuitable in an aristocratic drawing-room, and vice versa. We shall, however, give a specimen or two in the course of the various passes. The burlesque introduction next following is a paraphrase of a similar address quoted by Robert Houdin. Introductory Address. Ladies and gentlemen, in an age so enlightened as our own, it really is surprising to see how many popular fallacies spring up from day to day and are accepted by the public mind as the unchangeable laws of nature. Among these fallacies, there is one which I propose at once to point out to you, and which I flatter myself I shall very easily dispose of. Many people have asserted, and among others the celebrated Erasmus of Rotterdam, that a material object can be in only one place at one time. Now I maintain, on the contrary, that any object may be in several places at the same moment, and it is equally possible that it be nowhere at all. I must beg you to observe, in the first place, that I have nothing in my hands, except my fingers, and that between my fingers there is nothing save a few atoms of the mysterious fluid which we call the atmosphere, and through which our jolly old earth spins so merrily along. But we must leave the commonplace regions of astronomy and return to the mysteries of hermetic science. I have before me, as you will have noticed, 3 little cups or goblets. The metal of which these are composed is an amalgam of costly minerals, unknown even to the most profound philosophers. This mysterious composition, which resembles silver in its solidity, its color, and the clearness of its ring, has over silver this great advantage, that it will at pleasure become impalpable as air, so that solid bodies pass through these goblets as easily as they would through empty space. I will give you a curious illustration of this by making one goblet pass through another. This the performer does in the manner already described, and after a moment's pause continues taking up his wand in his left hand and secretly palming a ball in his right. This little wand, you are possibly aware, ladies and gentlemen, goes by the name of Jacob's rod. Why it is so called, I really don't know. I only know that this simple-looking wand has the faculty of producing various articles at pleasure. For instance, I require for the purpose of my experiment a little ball. My wand at once supplies me. He produces a ball from the wand and lays it on the table. With this or some similar introduction, the performer proceeds to exhibit Pass 1. Having placed a ball under each cup, to draw it out again without lifting the cup. Having produced a ball from the wand as last described, and having laid it on the table, the operator continues. Allow me to show you once more that all the cups are empty. He raises them one by one and replaces them, and that I have nothing in either of my hands. I take this little ball, he picks it up with his right hand, and apparently transfers it to the left, really palming it in the right, and place it under one of the cups. Here he raises the cup with his right hand and simulates the action of placing the ball under it with the left. I draw another ball from my wand, this is really the same ball which remained palmed in the right hand, and place it in a like manner under the second cup. He goes through the motion of transferring to the left hand and thence the cup as before, but this time actually does what on the former occasion he only pretended to do, and leaves the ball under the middle cup. I produce another ball. He half draws the wand through his fingers, but checks himself halfway. I think I heard one of you assert I have a ball already in my hand. Pray satisfy yourselves, showing the palms of his hands, the fingers carelessly apart, that such is not the case. A lady suggested just now, by the way, it was only said in a whisper, but I heard it. They didn't really put the balls under the cup. It was rather sharp on the part of the lady, but you see she was wrong. Here are the balls. Footnote. The reader will understand that nobody has in fact made any such observation, but the overhearing of an imaginary objection is often of great use, as enabling the performer to do some necessary act, which he could not well have done without such pretext. Thus, in this instance, the performer wants a plausible excuse, first for altering his apparent intention of immediately producing a second ball from the wand, and secondly, for lifting the middle cup, and so regaining possession of the ball. A conjurer thus addressing an imaginary objector is said in French parler à la costonnade, but the phrasing has no precise equivalent among English performers. End footnote. So saying, the performer lifts up the middle cup with his left hand, and picking up the ball with his right, holds it up that all may see, immediately replacing it under the same cup. The last movement is simulated only, the ball being in reality palmed in the supposed act of placing it under the cup. We have now a ball under each of these two cups. We want only one more, and here it is, apparently producing a third ball, but really the same again, from the wand. We will now place it under this last cup. He actually does so. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we have 3 cups and 3 balls, one under each cup. So far, I admit that I have not shown you anything very surprising, but now comes the puzzle, to take the balls from under the cups. Perhaps some of you sharp gentlemen will say there isn't much difficulty in that. Lift the cup and pick up the ball. He suits the action to the word, lifting up the third goblet with the left hand and picking up the ball with the right. A very good solution, but it doesn't happen to be the right one. The problem is to draw out the balls without lifting the cups. Here, he replaces the cup, apparently placing the little ball beneath it, but really palming it as already described in the case of the middle cup, and then returns to the first or furthest cup, touching the top of the goblet. He lets the palmed ball drop to his fingertips and immediately exhibits it, saying, "This is the way I take balls out of the cups. The ball being no longer needed, I return it into the wand." This he does as described at page 277, immediately afterwards, if desired, handing the wand for examination. "In like manner I draw out the second ball," and he repeats the same process with the middle goblet, "and pass that also into my wand. I need not even handle the goblets. See, I merely touch this third goblet with my wand, and the ball instantly appears on the top." The company, of course, cannot see any ball on the end of the wand, but a ball nevertheless is taken thence by the process already described, and letting go of the palmed ball to drop to the tip of the fingers as they come in contact with the wand. "I pass this also into my wand. Stay, though on second thoughts, I shall want a ball for my next experiment, so I will leave it here on the table." We have given a somewhat elaborate description of this first pass in order to give the reader some idea of the various feints and artifices employed in relation to the cups and balls. It would be impossible, from considerations of space, to do this for each of the passes, and the reader must therefore remember the descriptions following give merely the essential outlines, which must be worked up to dramatic effectiveness by the ingenuity of the individual performer. Where practicable, we shall allow the few words put into mouth of giving the performer to indicate the actions accompanying them, only giving special stage directions in cases where the performer does not suit the action to the words. For the sake of distinctness, we shall indicate the goblets, reckoning from the left hand of the performer, as A, B, and C. See figure 118. Pass 2. To make a ball travel invisibly from cup to cup. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you watch very closely, you will be able to see the ball travel from one cup to another. I take the ball, transfers it apparently to left hand, and place it under this cup, C. You all see it, there's nothing under this one, B. In raising B with the right hand, he introduces under it the palmed ball. I shall now command the ball, which I have just placed under the first cup, C, to travel under this one, B. Attention! You will see it pass. He makes a motion of the wand from one cup to the other. There it goes! This cup, C, as you see, is empty, and under this one, B, is the ball. I will replace it under the same cup, B. He, in reality, palms it. There is nothing under this cup, A. He secretly introduces the ball under A. Now observe again. Pass. Did you see it? No? Well, I don't much wonder at it, for I can't always see it myself. Here it is, however. Lifts A, and this cup, B, is empty. He replaces the cups on the table and lays the ball beside them. End of section 30. Recording by April Walters.